this leads to a couple of interesting points. The rogue is a useful figure, not because of special abilities like thieves and things like that, they don't have them, but simply because they are not optimized for combat or magic. And in Tunnels
Hmm.
and Trolls, not being having some people who are not optimized this way is not that bad an idea.
How
So
come?
so therefore, do you see what I mean? That this has instantly not it's not an automatic conflict of interest. It is throwing it to the group of saying, and I suppose your group will simply discover the nuances of this mechanic, these constraints, because of what kind of people you are. That's not my
Hmm.
problem. Have fun. Good luck. So you can see that Tunnels and Trolls goes straight into interpersonal dynamics in terms of money. Now we also go to um, Lamentations of the Flame Princess, which I assume is a game
Hmm.
that you've probably looked at in some detail, given what you've talked about, because we can have someone pop up behind my chair and say, "Just play Lamentations,"
Hmm.
with everything that you've said so far. So, no, I see that's the point. You have opinions about that, and that matters here. But before we move into those, let's take a look at what Lamentations actually does. Um, the the important point for treasure acquired in terms of advancement is that it actually has to be transported safely out of the adventure. You do not simply lift it off the goblin and say, "I have 1,000 gold pieces. I, you know,
Kaching.
yeah, exactly."
Yes.
No, you now have a very heavy item that you have to get the hell out of this, get out of this hellhole, right, and somehow get back. And that's actually not too different from a couple of rules in prior games, but it's very explicit here. In other words, it is a benefit in terms of the larger presence of your character inside and outside of society, which is related in the Lamentations construct to the fact that your characters aren't any good at society. It is given. You cannot go back and be a merchant. You cannot go back and buy a castle and be a lord. You cannot, be merely a popular scholar, who happens to know magic. This is not going to work out for you at all. You are bad at it. So if you do get a library, a laboratory, a church, a castle, or whatever, for whatever reason, you're bad at it and you are going to have to go out there back to the hellholes to acquire wealth because you can't do it there. It won't work. So, and your friend, of course, your non player character friend who's exactly like you, it works for them. They're perfectly happy with their shop or their castle or their whatever. You are the problem. So, this context for Lamentations of the Flame Princess, the rules about treasure, are embedded in that construct. What about here? What about here? What is the compelling? Now, I don't mean like a behaviorist reward. You need the treasure so that your points go up or whatever. I'm talking about something you cannot fix with just a change, with just erasing it. I am talking about something that, and also, I am not talking about a reason to get treasure so you can get better in the sense of, and then you can keep playing the game.
Hmm.
That is, again, that is a circular argument. I am much
Hmm.
more interested in the question of what conceptually is at work here so that the acquisition of material goods is a compelling thing for me.
Hmm.
Or compelling
Yeah,
is not quite the right word, shall we say inspiring.
yeah. As a lowly knight without land, your ultimate goal is going to get a title and land or the hand of a princess. And before you can do that, you need to have a certain social standing among the knights with your deeds. Because the gold is just a way to measure deeds, really, an objective way to do that. And there might be other ways to do that even without gold. If you actually go out to slay a dragon rampaging or something like that, that will also net you
Mm-hmm.
fame or the experience points to get ahead. And then you can have your own castle and the game ends for that character.
All right, so we are quite interested then in the sense of socially, you are not going to get this. Someone else will, but not you. So it is
Mhm.
time to go off and make yourself known.
Exactly.
Okay. And money is a bit of a means of an end or an expression, one of the important variables in it. So, okay, so this is very much a game about you are not in a entitled position. You are in a position of some where any number of other people would might give up and go become uh, an unknown, right? You can go
Hmm.
off and become an unknown for the rest of your life, but no, you are not going to become an unknown. Now, with
Not quite. You do start as a knight, or most of the characters, but a lowly knight
oh
without
sure,
land. So,
yes, but you are going to be somebody who is at this particular battle, Sir, I don't know,
hmm,
Sir, Sir one of these
Gunther, or
fellows, right, kills another fellow, and this is very important. And then these three guys died, and those three guys died, and their names are listed because they were important. And then you say, and a dozen other knights besides, and one of them was you. But who cares? That's who you get to be,
hmm,
right? So that's what I mean by become known. Sure, uh, you are in literary terms, you are no one. Okay, with this in mind, what sort of a saga, if we were to look at the trajectory of these characters, some of them meeting a dreadful end, and oh, some of them achieving this, this distinction. What sense of tension is there in the middle of that process? What do we if I look, for example, at the character, let's begin my character,
hmm,
and then we will proceed through an adventure or two.
okay.
Let us say that I am not part of an ogre's, dinner, and
Hmm.
now you are looking at my character. What looks different about them? How have they changed? Name some things that we would expect that have changed.
Hmm. Yeah, for example, you might get to meet an actual princess. In the Song of the Nibelungs, Siegfried serves, I think, Gunther for more than a year before he even gets to see Kriemhild.
Mhm.
And that is a privilege which he has to work hard for. Yeah, so that might be in the middle, so to speak, that you get to begin your courtship in earnest, and yeah, there's still a long way to go, of course.
So here we are talking about fictional positioning of the character, which is easily
Mhm.
expressed as whom they know and what sort of opportunities are involved in that. Okay.
Yes.
So, what about their other qualities. There are qualities of resources. Wealth obviously comes to mind. We might expect that this character has acquired some wealth and has either spent it on some things,
Mhm.
but also perhaps has some on reserve, if they are very lucky, have some on reserve for new problems,
Not
possibly.
really.
No? Tell me more about that.
In this case, they're going to have their magic items, but wealth is basically abstracted away. You give it away as a knight
Ah,
because and
okay.
spend it on lavish clothing,
Right, right.
and that is just part of the
Perfect.
expectation.
So, what really matters here is the glory, the deeds.
Yes.
My character, after a couple of adventures, has some deeds attached to them, has some presence, again, in terms of positioning, social positioning of others. What about effectiveness? Has things improved for them in terms of their
Well,
impact on the fiction of the moment? Do they do more
mhm.
damage? Do they take more damage? Do they know more things, practical things? What happens there?
The setting it's a special setting and it's for use with older versions of D&D, but I'm using those classes, for example, the fighter as the
Right.
knight,
Mm-hmm.
and that means you go up in level, more hit points, you
Mm-hmm.
can more attack more enemies simultaneously, that
Mm-hmm.
sort of thing.
Right. Okay. So excellent. So these are all forms of effectiveness change.
Yes.
Now, with all of this in place, um, it is useful to consider that in many games, what has happened during play is you can trace them to these changes. You can say, "Well, I have this," or rather, I, we did these things, and therefore I have changed in these ways." I should also talk about another kind of change, which may or may not be relevant to your game,
Mhm.
which is the impact on situations that the character has been involved with. So, for example, is the death of a given foe, does that actually change anything about the kinds of situations that the character may face later?
Mhm.
And so I was talking about changes in the character, and now I'm talking about changes on the broader or more geographic and social landscape that they inhabit, that they did these things in. Does that apply at all?
Well, they're going to be able to face to some extent. I mean, sometimes it's numbers going up. I mean, for example, the typical D&D giants are just, yeah, take the role of goblins, just bigger, yeah,
Right,
bigger
right.
numbers.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But in other cases, you will hopefully also face foes with unusual abilities, more, yeah, strange,
Well, I
yeah,
understand that, but I was thinking about changes in the situation that other people in the setting would be notable. I mean, in other words, is this does the map look different after a few sessions of play? Does the social circumstances of other characters have they changed? Has the have you prompted particular events to occur that would not have occurred without something you did?
probably not so much.
Okay. Now,
Uh,
there's nothing wrong
I
with
mean,
that, but I'm interested in which prevails, right? Which, sorry, go ahead though.
yeah, you might open up some opportunities when you meet or befriend monsters and so on. They might give you um, other things to adventure for, yeah. Um, which is something that I think develops organically in play, yeah, because you
Okay.
cannot plan this, but if you capture certain monsters, they owe you a service, for instance, and then you might use that to get to other adventuring opportunities, yeah.
Based,
And
yeah. Okay, based on what you just said, and based on what you said earlier, and some of my inferences about it, I'm getting a very strong sense that the foes, the adversarial characters, have very strong personalities.
Hmm.
Tell me about that.
Well, the fantastical foes, they all have fantastical need. They do not get young or as there are no orc children or giant
Right,
children or something like that.
right.
They have to fulfill their desire, and then they will spawn new monsters,
Mm-hmm.
or well, not necessarily monsters here. Let's say humanoids. For example, dwarves need to acquire gold as well, and then they will either haven't decided whether they split up or spawn a son.
Right. The actual in setting biology of this doesn't interest me at all. I am
Hmm.
much more interested in the phenomenon that the dwarves are interested in gold. And therefore, if you are there to take their gold, you have some set of problems. If you are there in
Hmm.
some situation where you could, for example, get lots of gold to these dwarves, or this particular dwarf, then
Hmm.
we have a change. You see, this is one of the biggest changes that I see. It's not just whether a
Okay.
foe is dead or alive, it is whether it's which potential adversaries you have served or helped, as they see it, and which potential adversaries you have killed.
Hmm.
And given the choices you have made about this, the nature of your deeds, of course, is going to be distinctive. Even more so, the attitude of later foes toward you is
Hmm.
very
Yes.
different from what it might otherwise be. Now, I consider this to be a central feature of everything you've talked about. When I think about
Hmm.
this and I say, all right, I will play my lowly little knight, and perhaps my sense of entrepreneurial ambition leads me to say, well, let's see if I can get a castle or not. But that is a lot. I mean, that's important as context. To say instead, and deciding what you do and whether you are successful or not against the trolls, against the dwarves, against this dragon, against the witch, against and considering what each of them was doing in terms of being a menace at the time.
Hmm.
And which one now is I mean, do you have a friendship with this witch whom you are not going to kill? Do you have do you have when dwarves appear in another adventure, are you a little nervous because everyone knows what you did with the dwarves last time? You are the one who
Hmm.
stole the gold of the dwarven chief over there, and now you are meeting dwarves and they're saying, "What's your name again? That sounds familiar."
Yes.
Right? You see, this is what I'm talking about now in terms of change.
Hmm.
It's not just you who has changed, it is the world around you that has changed as well.
Hmm.
So,
Yes, I expect that
yeah.
would
Well,
happen.
in this case, with this as a feature, something to consider for, as a literal uh, quality of play, I think that now we would look at the procedures of play and we would say a mechanical an overly representative mechanic so that you have your points of glory and maybe you have your points of hatred or suspicion for every different kind of creature. You have your points of social achievement, you have your points of romantic achievement, you have your experience that has led you to become more powerful step by step. um, that there becomes kind of a scorecard approach to these things. And
Mm-hmm.
so saying that some of those things are good to quantify and some of them are not so good to quantify, and which ones are which, is important for your game.
Yes.
Now, with that in place, we then ask this critical question: how do you develop a new situation of play? The first adventure is over. The ogre who kidnaps children has been killed, for example.
Mm-hmm.
And your character has survived, although 2 out of the 5 did not.
Mm-hmm.
And you are now in, the player looks expectantly at you,
Mm-hmm.
and you sit down to play some more. What is the procedure? What is the content? What is the process, the experience of providing new content?
Yeah, there will be a phase at the castle at court, and I will typically offer at least 3 different modules
Mm-hmm.
that I have embedded in the landscape,
Mm-hmm.
and players can hear some rumors,
Mm-hmm.
the old rumor tables, things like that. And I think they're going to decide based on those rumors and also on their resources. If they have a specific magic item to breathe underwater and there's some
Right.
castle in a lake, they might go for that and then try their hand at it. And if they don't like it, they'll withdraw and do something else.
Mm-hmm.